Welcome to We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. I'm Alicia J, and I'm here with Ashley Nicole Moss. And we're live. And we just had the NWSL championship. So we had to have Jenny Chiu in the house. Welcome, Jenny. Thank you for being
Hey,
here.
girl.
Thank you. I love being on with you guys. I'm so excited to talk about this one because it was exciting.
It was definitely
Alicia,
exciting.
you didn't get the glasses memo.
Well, listen, I can pull some out real quick. I got
your
some over
glasses,
here.
You throwing off the vibe of the pod right now. I don't know what's up with that.
With these bags under my eyes, I should be having some glasses on. Let me tell you.
That's why I'm wearing mine. Listen, before we get into the show and just all the intricacies of the championship, we want to remind you, as always, to make sure you're locked in, tapped in with us on all of our social media channels, and you have your notifications. You are subscribed to our YouTube channel, so notifications all the way up. And if you are a podcast listener versus a podcast watcher, we got you covered there too, because you scan this QR code and we will pop up wherever you get your pods. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, so there's no reason to not be tapped in with us right here at We Need to Talk Now, presented by TNT. I'm sorry, AT&T. I got multiple things on my mind right now. It's been a long night. Speaking of we need to talk now about the initial reactions to the championship. I mean, what do you make of it? We got a first-time champion, which is always fun. Initial reactions of just a championship game, the atmosphere, the vibe, the flow. Alicia got her glasses now, so we are a trio officially.
I love it. For me, I think this has been such a record-breaking year for women's football. The amount of people that have been attending matches surpassed 2 million. So to cap it off with the final being at CPKC Stadium, which was built for women's football specifically, and then for Orlando Pride to win the double, right? That's winning the Supporter Shield and then the cup as well. And for it to be Marta's year, to have this, we see later on about her family being there as well and all of these things. But I think it's just such a nice story, because when I worked for Orlando City and Orlando Pride, the resources that were given to them were so horrible and just not a good place at all. And when people were told you're getting sent to Orlando Pride, it was a complete negative. People were not happy about that. It was a bunch of stars, but it was not a team. And now you see this shift happen under Seb Hines, and he deserves so much credit for what has happened with this team. And of course, the goal scorer is BARBRA BANDA, someone that we talk about every time we talk about NWSL, and of course, Orlando Pride. So really exciting stuff. I want to get deeper into it all.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always excited to see a first-time champion. I think that always makes sports exciting in general, but I just think that the type of season that Orlando has had, just in totality, just breaking record after record, just having their streaks, having their individual players reach so much success and get so many accolades. It's just I don't want to call it a Cinderella story, because I think that if you've been watching long enough, you know how talented this team is. But I just think it's like the cherry on top of an already historic, successful season for this football club. So I know for them, this is what they work for all season, and every accolade along the way is great. It's sweet, but this is what you do it for. And now you can take that deep breath,
Yeah, and I just want to say specifically when it comes to Marta, just seeing her win that championship. I know it wasn't just her, but her and the team winning it, and seeing her mom in the stands, I was getting emotional every time they went to her, because she had never seen Marta play in person in the US. And they even said that she didn't even come prepared, because she didn't have a coat or anything for that cold weather. So they went on a shopping spree, which I thought was really cute too. But going back to Marta, just seeing her win, after the season, and the emotion that she was having. I don't know if you saw the interview with Darian Jenkins prior to the match, but she was very, very emotional, just talking about what she's been through and where she's come from, and what this, winning would mean to her. And so, obviously everybody was putting it out there on that field today, but to see her win it was incredibly special.
I mean, this is the first championship that features two teams that did not make the playoffs in the previous season. So that in itself is just a testament to how every season is different. Every season can be your season. There is no formula to figuring out who the champion will be. But obviously, in a championship game, there's always controversy. There's always conversations about calls, lack thereof, missed a call, right call, wrong call. And this championship was not without any of that. So, Jenny, I'm going to let you start this off here. Was it a foul? Was it not a foul? I mean, Emma let us know we have some officiating comments already circulating out there on social media. It's already out there. So let's break it down.
So I think that the call is correct only because you can't go back to VAR because it wasn't obvious enough. It's not a clear and obvious mistake. If you see it in the moment, it is hands to face, and that is a foul. But because he missed, or she missed it, excuse me, in the moment, you cannot return the call or reverse the call, right? So that's a tough one. If in the moment, I would say, yes, it's a foul. But then to then reverse it, should the goal be called back? No, that's not how that works. You know, in terms of the ruling, it has to be a clear and obvious mistake. And when you look at it, it's not a clear and obvious mistake. Yes, it's hands to the face, but it's not like a two hands pushing you, you know, like a very obvious mistake. So that's why Christina Uncle came on and talked about the VAR decision. I think that's correct as well. So I think it went correctly. You know, it's very, very difficult to say otherwise.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. I think when you have something like that, that to me, which was definitely a foul. I mean, when you see it, you always think, like, what if that hadn't happened? Or what if that was called and it could change the trajectory of the game? But that is true. And that's true in all sports. Like any call, just the way that the players are playing, you know, plays that weren't made, you know, that kind of thing could change the whole thing. So you can't, in my opinion, you know, just look at something like that that has happened. Yes, was it unfortunate? For sure. Especially in a championship game. You don't want something like that to be what people are talking about. Like, you don't want to talk about the referees. That's not a point that you want to be made. But you also can't hang, you know, your whole game on that one play because there's so many different things that go into actually winning. And so that's what I would say to that. Was it unfortunate? Absolutely. Is it something that I think we should say was the deciding factor of the game? Absolutely not.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think that's true in all sports. Obviously, you have the biggest moment or the final moment, depending on where the call does or doesn't happen rather. That's like the lasting memory. And I feel like sometimes, you know, throughout the course of a game, people can have short-term memories, and it's like what happened the most recent is at the tip of your brain. But to your point, Alicia, like there's so many things that have to happen to win a championship. You name the sport. There's just so many things that have to happen that you can't, it's easy to put it on the most egregious or what you think is the most egregious mistake in the course of a game, in the course of a match. But when you really look at it in hindsight and then you start really diving into the X's and the O's and the film and, you know, going back and looking at all that, there's a bunch of mistakes that happen. There's a bunch of things in regards to performance that can be done better. So I definitely don't want people to dilute the product that we saw tonight based on one call, because one call doesn't change the outcome of a game. It's annoying. It can be annoying, but it's not the deciding factor. So.
Yeah, and I'm really curious for anybody who's watching, you know, please put your comments about that call down there too, because we'd love to hear from you. But right now, what I want to hear from Jenny is, who was your X factor when it came to this match? I mean, you could talk about both teams, you know, obviously there was a winner, but there was an X factor in both. Who were your X factors on either team?
Okay, so I have previewed this match 4 or 5 times on all of our networks and across everything. And I did not preview this woman at all. I did not talk about her once. And to me, she stood out this game and completely changed this. Carrie Abello, the Orlando Pride's left back. I was watching the game with my boyfriend and his friends, and they were like, oh my goodness, this girl is really good. And we hope that one day she's on the national team because she's very skilled. And what makes her so important to what Orlando Pride did today is that she shut down Trinity Rodman. Because when you think about Washington Spirit, when we're previewing these games, when we're talking about what it's going to take for Washington Spirit to win it, it is always you get Trinity Rodman the ball, and she is going to create magic. She's going to do the one-on-one situations, and she's going to just create havoc, right? And score goals. But Carrie Abello marked her all game long, made it incredibly difficult. She took a yellow card in doing so in all of these situations. And I would say that the defensive shape of Orlando, which is something that we expected, right? We expected Anna Morehouse and the defense to continue to be strong all season long. They only conceded 20 goals. They were the least scored on. All of these things we already knew about them defensively. But then when you pick out specifically, Dyke, Sams, Strom, and Abello had an absolute game. But also the defensive center mids coming in and helping them as they screen. Anna Morehouse deserves credit. For me, the X factor for Orlando winning it is, yes, you can talk about Banda's goal. You can talk about, the offensive aspects. But for me, it's the fact that you locked down defensively and you didn't allow Washington Spirit to capitalize, because Washington Spirit, for me, was the better team. Second half, you saw a lot of their combination plays where they had the ability to win this game, but Orlando's defense did not allow that to happen.
I love that. I'm a big fan of defense. Obviously, I would go with the obvious answer for me, which is BARBRA BANDA. That goal in the first half. 5th point overall, marked her 4th in the playoffs just in general. But I do think that the defense really stuck out to me as well, because we already know that both of these teams can score. But I think that the biggest thing going into this matchup was who was going to lock down already 2 offensive powerhouses from doing just that. And I think that a lot of people were kind of expecting this to be a higher scoring game just because of how offensively gifted both these teams are. And the fact that that's not the game that we got, that's not the match that we got, is a testament to the defensive scheme. So I love that pick.
Yeah, I echo what both of you are saying on so many levels, and obviously she wasn't on the winning team, but I just want to say how Hirschfeld, like, she was all over everything this match. I mean, nobody had a perfect game, right? We can't say that, but she definitely was all over the place. And I had my eyes on her a lot of the times because she was just orchestrating so much, stopping so much, creating so much, doing so much. And so I just have to give kudos to how I would personally say that the X factor would be Banda as well, obviously, because of the goal and that led to the win. But when I looked at everybody and was watching, my eyes were always on Hal, because she was not playing games. She was doing the damn thing all over the field. And so she's definitely somebody that I want to mention. But we can't go further without mentioning the history of this Orlando Pride, everything that they did. I'm just going to go down and read some notes. It was Orlando's first NWSL championship ever, after winning the first ever NWSL Shield. And so that is huge on so many levels. They become the 7th different NWSL team to win a championship. Seb Hines, like, can we give all the kudos to him? Becomes the first Black head coach to win an NWSL championship, became the first Black head coach in the NWSL history in 2022. So in the history of the NWSL, the first Black coach, brought the Pride back from being at the bottom of the table to champions, you guys. Like, that is so huge in a matter of 2 seasons. So on what it means, I've always thought that it was my responsibility to show, and this is Coach Hines, to show the way. Hopefully this will show a way for more Black coaches in this league and other leagues. So, given all of these stats, and there's so many more that we could say about Orlando this season, what are your thoughts on the history that they made this? We'll start with you, Jenny.
Well, Alicia, I think you mentioned something massive there. Seb Hines winning Coach of the Year is, I guess, kind of personally important to me, just because I used to work there. And when he started, he was a volunteer assistant coach. Okay, that means you're not making money. That means you're just, you're just there because you want to learn and you want to grow.
Yeah.
And that is not too many years ago, right? He went from being an Orlando City player. So the Orlando City, Orlando Pride is the men and women's side, for those who don't know. And he went from being a player to being a volunteer coach for the women's side, and then eventually being an assistant coach officially on, to being interim head coach, and then now the head coach. Just that trajectory for him, and then to win as the first Black NWSL Coach of the Year is just incredible. To see that trajectory and to see what an honest man, and just like good-spirited, always wanting things to be better. When you listen to these players talk about what has changed underneath him, or as he is the coach. It's so lovely to hear because well, I won't throw that on everyone. I, as a women's soccer player, and many of my friends have been on very toxic teams. And a lot of that comes from the coaching staff enabling that. And to hear how he has completely changed their experience under the Orlando Pride has been wonderful to hear, because I was there when they would complain about, hey, this is how we're being treated and this is that. And we're second-class citizen to the men. And now Seb Hines has come in and made them feel important, made them feel a part of a team, and that they care about each other. And you hear them talk about it over and over again, the family, family, family word. And whenever you talk about championship teams, because I know you guys cover other sports as well, championship teams, you often hear that word family, and that it's so sincerely, felt across everyone. And this is what you have with this team here. And I think Seb Hines deserves immense credit for what he's done for this team.
Yeah, and I mean, to add on to that, I think that it's just another sport, another industry, just another entity in sports as a whole where, barriers are being broken down. And I think that sometimes it's mind-boggling in the year 2024, almost 2025, to still hear the first Black or the first Asian or the first, insert minority to accomplish something. And I think that we have made so many strides in sports as a whole, and we've overcome so much when it comes to diversity or lack thereof. And I think that sometimes you might think that you're further along, or we're further along as sports fans than we actually are. There's so many more firsts. And I just look forward to the time, every single time that this happens, it's now, okay, the first is now out of the way, who's going to be the next? And I think that's something to celebrate as well, because now it's just another first that you got out of the way, not obviously taking away from the history and the celebration that will follow this. But now it's the responsibility of soccer as a whole to make sure this is not the last that we see this. And I think that's something to look forward to as well.
Well, when you talk about looking forward, what a monumental season for Coach Hines, and what a monumental season for the Orlando Pride. But when I'm looking at this match in general, this NWSL match, I was getting emotional because I'm looking at Michelle Kang, who gave $30 million to U.S. soccer over the next 5 years, and let alone all the other things that she's done, right, to invest into women's sports. Then you have Grant Hill, who is an investor for Orlando, and then Magic Johnson sitting there, who's an investor for Washington. You have a sold-out crowd and a record-breaking attendance in the NWSL, period. And then on top of that, you're sitting in CPKC Stadium, which is the first purpose-built women's professional sports stadium in the world. All of those things are historic, right? And it just was amazing to see how far, and Jenny, you can speak to this too, how far soccer has come. And then I'm thinking how far women's sports has come in this year alone. I mean, monumental isn't even the word. And I know you can speak to this because you just told us how it was.
Yeah.
So what do you think about all of this history that was made in the NWSL this year?
Oh, it's amazing. When I mentioned surpassing attendance of 2 million league-wide, it's something that we don't hear in women's football, right? There were sometimes stadiums, which I went from a very unique experience, right, where I worked for Portland Thorns, Timbers and Thorns, and the Thorns sell out their stadium. The Thorns have a huge fan base. So that's what I saw as women's football. And then I went to Orlando Pride, where this is a team that has Marta, Alex Morgan, Ali Krieger, Ashlyn Harris, like these huge names in world football. And there's not people at these matches. I mean, they're not even getting 13,000. They're not even getting these numbers. And you have these stars that everybody in the world wants to see. And that just shows you that every market wasn't doing it the way that it needed to be done, right? There was a product that can be sold. And what do? Well, you need people that care. You need people like Michelle Kang to come in, Magic Johnson to come in, all of these people to come in and say, hey, this product matters. And this product, like anything else, is a business, and it will give us return, right? Like, people are not just giving money for charity, and women's sports is not a charity. And we as women speak about this all the time. And these people have come in and said, this matters. And with that money, we've been able to, first of all, Washington Spirit, quarterfinals and semifinals, sold out stadiums. kudos to that. That's something that you want to see. These players have been working so hard for that. And when you think about Marta's been at Orlando Pride since 2017, and she talks about the transition and how things have changed since then. I mean, mind you, she was in the professional leagues prior to NWSL, right? We had a couple failed leagues, or maybe even 3 failed leagues prior to that, and she was a part of all of those. To now come and cap it off, and maybe this be her last game ever. She hasn't officially announced that, but that's something that is being whispered about. To be at CBKC Stadium, like you're saying there, Alicia, and to cap it off with this kind of year in the league and a double. Not only did they win the cup, right? There's a lot of controversy in American soccer because American soccer does the whole playoff thing. That doesn't happen in other places where you have a Shield winner and a cup winner. To win the double is incredible. I don't even know if I'm answering your question, Alicia, but I'm incredibly emotional about how amazing that is. As someone who has seen it all change, right? And you mentioned Michelle Kane with a $30 million investment. This is something that I've been calling all my women's soccer coach friends about and saying, hey, just so you guys know, this money that's being invested is not just for the players. It's for women's coaches, women's referees, women's technical staff. This is going to help elevate all women in the sport. And that's massive. I mean, that is beautiful to see because you just need someone to care, right? And then once Michelle Kane cares, everyone else is thinking, hold on, that's a really smart businesswoman. She's not just doing this. There must be some money there, and other people will come with their money as well. So that's exciting.
No, and you can see that reflected. Everyone and their mom wants to invest now, which I love. Like, I'm like, who is next? Like, the list goes on and on. So I'd love to see it on every level.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Marta, and she told The Athletic she wants to play at least 2 more years, but that could change. And speaking of Marta, we are going to now talk about her a little bit deeper in our next segment, one of our favorite segments, and that is Connecting Changes Everything, presented by AT&T. Well, we've been talking about it all podcast long. Marta is one of the biggest trailblazers in women's sports in general, but we're talking women's soccer. And now she is finally an NWSL champion. Now, for people who are unfamiliar, I'm just going to read off some of these notes surrounding her as a person and her as a player. She is widely regarded as the greatest female soccer player of all time. She grew up in poverty, playing without shoes, and later stuffing newspaper into her boots to make them fit. She played with boys, was the only girl, faced discrimination during one children's tournament. A coach from another team said his team wouldn't play against her. She was later removed from the tournament. The organizer told Brazilian media it was to protect her. The following year, it was then made a boys-only competition. She made her WWC debut in 2003, just 17 years old, and scored a penalty 14 minutes in, scored again in the next group game, and another penalty in the team's round of 16 exit. She's been named FIFA World Player of the Year 6 times. Including 5 consecutive years from 2006 to 2010, and is Brazil's top goal scorer, with 119 goals, holds the record for most goals scored in any World Cup, women's or men's, with 17. And I mean, the list goes on and on. We can talk about more of these accolades, but just hearing her story of such humble beginnings and, discrimination when it comes to, sexism and misogyny and all those things that still very much exist in so many parts of the world, in so many different industries, in so many different aspects. You can completely understand, even if you are not familiar with Orlando, with soccer as a whole, women's soccer. Now, in hindsight, seeing the emotion that was invoked from not only her, but her mother as well, hearing all that puts, I feel like, it all into perspective. It's a huge journey. And I think that when you talk about players, soccer players in the US, obviously there's always trials and tribulations. But I remember when I was in Greece this summer, just making a comparison, and we were going through Athens, and you see, how they live over there, and then you think about like Giannis, now one of the biggest basketball players in the world, and the humble beginnings that he's come from to get to. It just puts everything into perspective. And I feel like when you talk about international players, it's just even more incredible when they actually are able to make their dreams come true in the States, in a professional league, coming, I feel like, from such humble beginnings like that. So it just makes me like her even more.
Man, like her, love her, but also
Yeah.
just but also she is a testament that you can do anything in this life.
Yeah.
Like, you can literally go from playing with no shoes
Mm,
to the endless accolades that we have on this list. I'm looking through all of them and I'm just like,
that's a lot.
there's no way we could even get through the rest of that.
Right.
We'd be here for another hour if we went through all of her
Right.
accolades. But literally persevering through the toughest things that you could persevere through and
Right.
coming out and just constantly being on top and getting, like your first NWSL championship, like you've been playing for years upon years upon years upon years and getting it, and she's obviously got so many other things too, but
Mhm.
it is a testament to perseverance, a testament to never giving up. And also another thing I want to point out is that she's saying, no matter what I do, I always want to make sure that women are helped in soccer. She said that, and I'm not, I'm not saying it verbatim. I'm
Right.
definitely paraphrasing, but she is a player that has always made sure that she stood up for women in soccer. And I want to say that that's one of her biggest accomplishments too, along with so many other people that have done it. But it is just amazing to see what she's done. And I just can't wait to see what she continues to do, even beyond playing on the field, because I know she is going to be a voice for women in this sport and in sports for her entire rest of her life. And so it's phenomenal to see. I mean, like and love. That's all I can say. They did it for Marta today, for sure.
Yeah, they definitely talked about that in the press conference. Sorry, Ali Watt was being interviewed and she's like, this is for Marta, this is for Marta, and deservingly so, right? Everything she's given back to the game. This is a game I grew up playing, and that was like the one woman figure that you knew. You knew Mia Hamm, you knew Marta. Like, there's very few names that we knew. Now we have a plethora of athletes that we can look to and see. But if we're having the moment to celebrate Marta, even though I said like maybe there's whispers, I don't want to say that anything is either way. I'm just saying, like, why would you not sail off into the sunset with a double? Like, just winning it, it just like sounds so real. Doesn't mean that it's actually going to happen, but it just means that, cherry on top. There it is. I'm going to read to you the quote that is like touching, and like I know it by memory, but I looked it up just to make sure I don't misquote. But this is like the most memorable moment that I have of Marta recently, and I just cried because I watched it live on television. Then after that, I tried to say it, and I was crying every time because it's so powerful. But it goes to what you're saying, Alicia, about where she comes from and wanting to give back. So after they lost and got knocked out of the World Cup, this is what she says live to a camera, like looking straight at it. It's about wanting more. It's about training more. It's about looking after yourself more. It's about being ready to play 90 minutes and then 30 minutes more. So that's why I'm asking the girls. There's not going to be Formiga forever. There's not going to be a Marta forever. There's not going to be a Cristiane. Women's football depends on you to survive. Think about it. Value it more. Cry now so you can smile at the end. And this is when she's crying because they get knocked out, but Brazil didn't have the players to kind of continue their legacy, because the players that she's mentioning are the ones that have carried that whole national team for so long. But you just see the emotion of like, you guys have to like work harder so that we still remain in the conversation and that women's football is this huge thing. So just to what you're saying, she cares so much about the game. That's all she really loves in this life. And it's so awesome to see her get the championship she deserves.
Man, we can almost just end the show right there after that quote.
It's definitely a phenomenal end to an incredible season, and just an incredible career. Not saying she's hanging it up, but if she does decide to make that decision, it's been an absolutely inspirational, just monumental ride. Once again, congratulations to the Orlando Pride. Congratulations to women's soccer as a whole. So many strides have been made this season, particularly. So many records have been broken in terms of viewership, in terms of attendance, and that also is a win That's also so important for growing the game, and not only growing the game, but making sure that people find value in helping to grow the game by investing and doing all the things that we don't necessarily see behind the scenes. As you can see, when you invest and put your money in making sure these athletes are comfortable and they're safe and they feel valued, the reward will happen. And that's all that they want. That's all that they need to perform to the highest level. So once again, congratulations to the Orlando Pride. We thank you all for joining us, this trio, this glasses trio. Alicia, thank you for getting on board and hanging. Jenny, we love, love, love when you are on. If you guys missed a minute of the show, don't worry. We're putting the whole episode up on YouTube, so you can watch there. You can also watch all of our clips and everything that we have done already on our social channels. And like I said, at the end of the show, there is always a QR code that you can scan. If you need your hands free, maybe you're working on your soccer game, you can listen to us while you do that. And we're on Spotify and we are on Apple. Until next time. Bye, guys.
We'll see you next show.